Yeah, well, I mean, I think the World Championships last year was certainly the big turning point um, initially, and then Tokyo this year was just kind of solidifying myself. I feel like, getting into a race that's fast from the beginning and being competitive the whole way, running a really good time. That's just sort of confirmation.
So is New York kind of like a combination of those two in a way? Like, not a fast time trial, a little more tactical, or like how are you approaching New York?
Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts of pace besides like I'll run whatever I have to run, to be competitive. Um, but yeah, it's without there being pacers, it really makes it an interesting race. More like with World Championships last year, so I know I have some experience with it. Um, but nothing like this course before. So I'm really looking forward to the challenge of the New York course and the competitive field that still will be.
You feel like New York half yourself? Did you run that?
Yes, I did that one time. I don't have a great recollection of it, and that might just be me blocking my memory because it went really badly. But it is still experience regardless. I've gone through and watched a previous broadcast, and I've watched New York a lot over the years. So, I have a general idea alongside, elevation chart. I'm a student of the sport. I'm still trying to study up as much as I can and, be as, experienced in a way as I can be for a course that I ultimately haven't run before.
Yeah. You can be in the film room in track too. It's not just for ball sports.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Cam, I guess when we spoke in April, the plan was world champs, go for a medal there. What changed to, I guess, decide on a fall marathon?
Well, a major change with that was watching Kipchoge struggle at Boston. Honestly, I watched that and went, that could be me. Like I also haven't taken on a course like Boston, like New York, before something like the Olympics, which is going to be an even more difficult course. I think the elevation change is like double Boston. So I want that experience, and New York's going to give it to me. And I guess I could go and run a hilly marathon anywhere, but having one that's competitive like this is super important too, to be challenged in that regard. So it just, when we looked at it from the standpoint of logically and not emotionally what I really wanted to do, because chasing a medal at the World Championships is still something that I think will be important to me in the future as well. But what makes sense being ready at the Olympics was this race and having the opportunity to run another major. It just made sense. Not an easy decision, but one that I'm very glad that I made.
Let's talk training. People love hearing about your workouts and volume and everything. I mean, how did it change, I guess, this time around?
We converted a lot of the easy mileage to hillier stuff, and that was a very difficult change because I run a lot of mileage, and so even converting, like half of it is still a pretty rough change for me. But I had a lot of time to do it, and I'm very happy with where I'm at with it now. So, I mean, that was sort of the major thing. There's always, changes that my coach is making to, make training not be stale, kind of have a new adaptation to it. And, weights is always changing a little bit too. But I would say the introduction of more hill workouts and just overall hillier mileage on the day-to-day has been the major thing. It's probably about the same as before Eugene, which was like still about the 170 to 180 miles a week. I track everything in time. Like, I guess we talked about this before. And so I'm not getting to the end of the week and adding it all up. But, like, the method and the weekly plan is still the same. So the mileage should still basically be the same as well. Yeah.
Is this doubles, singles, triples?
I do triples, yeah. I triple 3 or 4 times a week. And then I double 2 times a week as well.
What's the time on a triple usually like? Like time of day?
Like time of day doing each part of it?
Yeah. Just like when you run.
Yeah, so like usually 9 or 10 a.m. for the first run, like 3 p.m. for the second one, and then like 8 o'clock at night for the last one. And that one's on a treadmill, and I have it set up at altitude, the treadmill. So I'm getting like that. I mean, I live in Portland, Oregon, so there's no altitude there. So, you know, without going to training camps, it's kind of my way of still getting that adaptation.
What do you do in between those runs?
Well, it depends on the day, but often there's either weights, there's sleep, there's just the day-to-day stuff that you have to do just to, you know, exist as an adult. You know, I don't get to just like avoid all of that, so I'm still pretty busy through the day. But you know, if we have usually, you know, 2 or 3 hours through the evening when my wife is back from work as well, you know, watch some Netflix, role play, you know, some video games, whatever, if we're able to. But you know, in the depths of marathon training, it feels like there's no energy to even really do that. It's just like, what do you want to do? I don't know. And it's an hour of just like trying to figure something out and then just napping before I have to run again. So it's, you know, it's busy. Yeah.
What's your taper look like then?
So we started the taper probably about, well, as far as like workouts go, a couple weeks out. Like my last big one was 2 Sundays ago. And then mileage begins to drop about a week and a half out. And by this point, I would guess I'm down to maybe, you know, like a quarter of my regular mileage by the time I'm going into the race, like especially for this last week. So it's a pretty significant drop. And then, yeah, workouts tend to kind of still stay in that same sort of speed range with just less total volume. So, yeah, of course.
Is it paid by the hour with all these?
That'd be nice. Yeah, I must be an hourly wage athlete. But no, I mean, you know, ASICS treats me super well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cam, I guess like when a couple weeks ago, Evans Chebet pulls out of the race. A couple of the other guys with fast PRs pull out. I mean, do you look at that and notice it and think like, all right, my odds just got better?
Yeah, I mean, there's no avoiding that. I mean, obviously, Tola is another big introduction to the race. I've raced against him before. I know how good he can be. But, you know, he's not an unknown entity to me at all. And I have certainly improved since that time as well. You know, I'm not the same athlete I was at the World Championships last year. But, yeah, I mean, as far as times go, I think I'm the 4th fastest time now, and I was the 6th before. And yeah, there's no question that I wouldn't say things got easier because there's no way any of these majors will be easy. And even though there's known, you know, strong competitors, there's ones that I won't know about that'll be ready to go and give big performances. And it's really about just not worrying about those things too much. And then once you get to the last, you know, 12K of the race, whoever is kind of there is your competition. So yeah, it's one of those things that I pay attention to, but ultimately my goals were the same regardless. You know, going in, I still was looking to try and win and podium, and that's the same, you know, whether chances are better or not. So.
How much have you studied this exact course? And like, I guess in watching tape, did you go back and watch like the last 3 editions of the New York City Marathon? Because I mean, last year's a little bit of an outlier with the weather and everything.
Yeah, I have to go through more still. So far, I've just gotten through the last one, and then just previous iterations I myself have watched over the years. But yeah, I would like to go back to previous years as well, because yeah, certainly the way the race can play out can be different from year to year. But at least my initial plan was just to watch it from the standpoint of, you know, seeing how the course runs and less about how tactically it plays out. So I don't try and do too much of that through a marathon build in full, because it's not really important, you know, until this point where like I want to be thinking about the race lots and like, you know, building up that excitement where I don't need that earlier in the build. I don't want to spend a month stressing about this race. I want to make sure it's the week before I'm thinking hard about it and, you know, building up that excitement and that nervousness to help me on race day.
Yeah, you don't want to leave it on the bus 2 weeks from now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you learn not to go out and not to go out in 60 from last year's race?
Yeah, that didn't seem like a great plan. I gotta say, it's that being said, it's amazing the performance that he put on until yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think I really appreciated that until I went back and watched it again, and I was like, people talked about him blowing up, but he looked really good and he was running really well until that happened. I mean, that's a crazy first half to be able to continue to perform like that later. So, I think, with the kind of athlete that he is, running a different race could have given him such a different result for the day, and I think that's got to be the big takeaway for me is like, what could he have done if he just ran smarter? And I want to be that smart athlete. Doesn't have to have that question after the fact of what have I done.
How busy is your mind during a race? Because we watch and it looks like, hey, there's a bunch of guys that are kind of jogging through, but how often are you calculating, measuring other guys, and how busy are you upstairs?
It's a lot of time to think, and from a mental standpoint, I think that is the major challenge. It's a lot of time to either be positive with yourself or be very negative with yourself, depending on what's happening with the race. And with shorter competitions, events, you're able to really go through the process of how you compete. You're able to kind of like just plan out each step of it. In the marathon, you don't get to do that because every 10 seconds you're resetting and rethinking again, and it's I try and just be my own biggest cheerleader when I'm out there. I try and really just like do a lot of positive self-talk. If I'm feeling like I'm going through a difficult patch early on in the race, I find it easy to just be like, I've done this so many times in practice. This isn't hard. Like, there's no reason to be worried about things. I'm pretty engaged in the race still, and focused about staying in the process of what I'm doing, and doing what I have to a million times in practice already to get my best performance.
You say you're your own biggest cheerleader. How much do you feel the hundreds of thousands of other cheerleaders that are out there in this particular race? Yeah,
I mean, that's definitely easy to say in practice, but yes, when you're racing, you have a lot of other really big fans and big cheerleaders as well. I guess I just think of that from the standpoint of like, that's what I'm practicing day to day is, I'm completely by myself out there training, but that's the whole idea with racing is you get a whole boost from a lot of other perspectives and standpoints.
How much confidence did the records that you set